Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Animation Appreciation Podcast. I'm your host, Liliana Stargazer, and today we're doing another Cartoons in Review. We're going to start this one off with Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go, not Teen Titans Go, not that horrible show. This is actually the show that was supposed to be a reboot of. Blech. I don't even like thinking about that show. Teen Titans ran from 2003 to 2006 and is based on a comic series by the same name. It was animated both in America and in Japan, so it is actually supposed to have a similar feel to anime. The series focuses on five teenagers, each with unique abilities and backstories. Robin, the leader, and the same Robin who worked for Batman. Dick Grayson and future Nightwing. The reason we know his name is there's an episode with an alternate reality, and no, he's not a villain. He just pops in, and his name is Dick Grayson backwards. I had to have subtitles on to figure that out. He has no superpowers of his own, but does have a high intellect and is often used in the show for plot reasons. That being said, he is, after all, a teenager and can be emotional, so he's not pure logic. Cyborg, the half robot, half track star, most of his body is robotic due to an accident that nearly killed him. Before that, he was an athlete and relatively normal. Beyond his superhuman strength, he has Sonic Blaster and whatever random robotic gifts the episode calls for. So, the little of him that is human is mostly his head. Specifically, about half the outside and most of the inside of his head. There's actually an entire episode where someone had to go into his mind to try to clear out a virus, and half his brain is robotic. There's another episode where somebody decided to take his human parts off and just make him a straight robot. And he says, if you take out humanity, you'll take out the best part of me. So he loves games and is just a fun little character. Beast Boy is a former member of the Doom Patrol. He can turn into any animal that exists, alien animals included. He got these gifts because his parents were traveling in Africa as geneticists, and he was bitten by a troop of green monkeys that his parents happened to be studying at the time, and he caught an illness that I could not pronounce to save my life. To save him, they tried an experimental serum that turned him green and gave him his gifts. They passed away in a boating accident, and he joined the Doom Patrol shortly after. As once he actually joined, he decided he didn't like the environment of the Doom Patrol and left and found Jump City, and that's how he found the team. He's just a goofball having fun and fighting crime. Starfire is an alien from the planet Tamaran. She has many gifts, each one is powered by a different emotion. Boundless confidence grants her strength. Extreme joy of flight allows her to fly. Righteous fury allows her to fire bolts from her hands. And we're not entirely sure what allows her to do the laser eyes, as it's not expressly stated. She learned to speak English instead of Tamaran through lip to lip contact with Robin when they first met. Yes, you heard me. She kissed Robin to learn the language because that's how Tamaranians work. Raven is a sorceress of shadow with the gift of flight. She's from a planet of Zinthos in a region known as Metreon in a parallel world called Azarath, as is shown in her mantra Azarath, Metreon, Zinthos. She's the product of her mother, Ariella, and the demon Trigon. She was raised in a temple as her father had abandoned her and her mother. She was born to be a portal for Trigon to use to invade the Teen Titans universe. There is an entire episode where this is the main problem. Her magic runs her emotions. The stronger the emotions, the stronger the magic. Unlike Starfire, it is not like happiness does not trigger this ability, it's just happiness goes straight into fuel. So she's often shown to be very empathetic and meh towards everything. In one episode, we see why when the emotional Starfire ends up in Raven's body and her magic runs rampant because of the bubbly girl's personality. The only time her chances ever changed was when a dragon trapped in a book taught her dark magic. And that was just her using a different spell. It's more of all of her homebrew spells are Azarath, Metreon, Zinthos. She learned from the monks that she was raised by. The five of them team up and protect their world and the town of Jump City. The most present threat of this world is called Slade, a DC Machiavellian villain. He is often known to be behind many of the issues that happen in town, just the day to day robberies and stuff are other villains. But when it's a big plot, it tends to be him. They have a whole cast of reoccurring villains and side characters that come and go in these series. You can actually see a couple of civilians over and over in the series. It's not quite the villain of the week, as there are overarching stories and a giant story, all of the interpersonal relationships between characters and character growth of the main characters, as well as villains and how they interact with the world. They live in a giant tea on a small island in the bay of their town. Apart from an unfinished storyline, there are only 5 Teen Titans in Jump City with a couple of other groups in other areas. That being said, there is a girl named Tara who was a Teen Titan in the end of the series, and it was actually addressed that that storyline was supposed to continue before the series was canceled. The show isn't as dark and gritty as SWAT Cats, but it is still dark. With Raven having to deal with her magic trying to forcibly open a portal for her father with with her body as like the center. There's another episode where she's reading a book and keeps getting interrupted, and her friends call her creepy for dressing in black and wanting to sit in her room and read. And actually, the dragon in the book took advantage of that. As a kid who did the same and was often called creepy, this series and this particular episode hit really hard. Starfire has an entire episode where a character calls her a trog. And at first, she doesn't tell anyone what it means, not until Cyborg calls her Froggy, and she looks at him and says, "Don't call me that." He looks at her and goes, "Why? He's been calling you this the whole time. Why? What does it mean?" And she says, "Nothing." "Well, then why are you? No, Cy, it means nothing. He's calling me nothing because he is racist against Tamaranians." She doesn't use the term racist, but as soon as Cyborg understands that this man has been calling his best friend nothing, he immediately looks at her and says, "Why did you tolerate this? Why aren't you telling anyone?" And she tells him something along the lines of, "It's not important." Cyborg himself even has a moment where he believes he can't have any growth because his cyborg parts are robotic and robots have limits. He ends up going beyond them because he's part human too. Beast Boy himself has a moment where he had a villain that he could not beat when he was in the Doom Patrol come back, and he'd actually defeated the entire Doom Patrol as well as the Teen Titans at the time, and Beast Boy himself had to take him on and win. Robin had several episodes where he dealt with PTSD and his own physical limits. The show is not a lighthearted show, but it's not as heavy as it seems like it could go. Now, what makes it special? In my opinion, it's the characters and their interpersonal relationships. It's not a drama show, so the conflicts are not like blown up between them and overblown, and that's a good thing. It's realistic. The show has moments like when Robin is seeing Slade's shadow or something like that that doesn't exist, and his friends take it very seriously. They try really hard to see what's going on instead of just outright dismissing him. They are his friends and they care and they support each other. And if he says he's seeing Slade around, they believe him, even though they know Slade should be dead. There's even one episode where a prank meant for Cyborg from Beast Boy goes wrong and it hits Raven. She ends up covered in motor oil, and instead of apologizing, Beast Boy just says the line he was going to use for Cyborg: "Better change that oil every 3,000 miles." And that episode is about their relationship and how this conflict is handled and how she's not, "No, this is, you could have hurt me. This is not okay." And yeah, it's how the damage is done. And Beast Boy had to stand there and say, "Raven, I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." The apology he should have said outright. Also, fun fact for you, the intro is actually sung by Puffy Ami Yumi, a Japanese group. If the intro is in English, it's a serious episode and meant to be taken very seriously. While if it's in Japanese, it's a goofy one, and that little detail is just a really nice thing to have. From the moment the episode starts, from the moment the intro starts, we know what kind of episode we're getting into. There's even one sung by a background character who is actually that alternative reality Robin. I but they just call him Larry. But it's sung by him because it's the Larry episode. And that one episode, because he has reality breaking powers, is about him. It has all the tropes from that time period done in its own way. The relationships and personalities and gifts of the people involved in the show are what drives it and makes it a good show. Was it good at the time? It was insanely popular. Action figures, a re release of the comics, and all that good stuff. I knew so many people who loved it and were obsessed. So, yeah, I feel it was a good show at the time and it was very popular. It also lacked some of the gimmicks that the 1990s were famous for, such as pop culture references and celebrity guests. None of them were present in the show. That being said, there were a lot of DC references because this takes place in the DC universe. There's even an episode where Batman is brought up and Robin doesn't want to talk about him. Does it hold up now? Absolutely. The morals and lessons they teach are good, and the lessons and everything else that the world around them learns are good. Everything about this from the morality on is good. The characters are still so well done that it holds up and remains believable. My personal thoughts. I loved this show enough that I wanted all the action figures and comics and everything. Raven was always my favorite. She dressed all in black and looked so intimidating. And I was just a young goth. So yeah, I really loved this show. I loved having my representation. And Beast Boy even in one of the episodes says, "Yeah, you're creepy, but that's not a problem. You don't have to suffer alone. Being creepy is not the problem. The problem is you're locking yourself in the room." And being called creepy my whole life, that meant something to me. So, yes, I love the show, and I highly recommend it for anyone who loves superheroes and villains in the DC style. That's all for today. Thank you for listening, and as always, remember if it's animated, someone did it on purpose. Thank you again, and have a great night.